Hello and welcome to the first episode of All About AI with Ali Abidi. This is a podcast to understand more about artificial intelligence and the impact it has on everybody's lives. Today, in our first episode, we have leading experts in machine learning and AI, large language models, Lior Gazit and Meysam Ghaffari. They also happen to be authors of a latest book called Mastering NLP from Foundations to Large Language Models, which is available on Amazon and all other channels. This will be a conversation with them talking about their experiences writing the book, their experiences in general working in the leading spaces as experts in NLP, large language models, and some tips and tricks for us tech professionals. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of All About AI with Ali Abdi, and I am your host, Ali Abidi. Well, welcome to All About AI with Ali Abdi. Thanks a lot for your time, Lior and Meysam, and thanks a lot for joining this podcast. So, how are you all today?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Also, let's start with a quick introduction about yourselves, and then we'll move ahead from there. So, Lior, would you want to go first?
So my name is Lior Gazit. I have been in the machine learning, data science, AI space for quite some time now. I've been in the tech sector, in the healthcare sector, and right now in the financial services sector. Also, a good opportunity to mention that we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting stuff here, but none of them represent the work that I do in my current employer or the work that's done in my current employer or the opinions of that. I right now have a machine learning group in the financial services sector, and we have a good mix of subject matter expertise and the machine learning engineers putting together capabilities. And I'm really fascinated about how the field of machine learning and NLP in particular has been evolving. I've had a chance to participate in several endeavors, whether for instance in the work space or the advisory space. But one specific one that I always like to mention is my collaboration with Meysam on the book that we put together, Mastering NLP. And I hope to really be able to share a lot of Meysam's and mine's thoughts about the field here in this podcast. So thank you.
That's great. Meysam, can we go to you now?
Yeah, sure, my pleasure. So I'm Meysam Ghaffari, and I have been in the AI and data science, machine learning since 2012. That actually in academia. So I was having my master and PhD in computer science with the focus of AI, and after that I was doing postdoc, and then I joined the MSK. Actually, my first manager was Lior, and I had the opportunity to work with him and learn a lot from him. And I was focused on NLP for the last 4 or 5 years in healthcare, particularly, and trying to use the capabilities of NLP models and machine learning and deep learning models to solving different tasks. And I'm also very fascinated with the fast developments of the new models that we see and the increasing capabilities of them. So uh, we love to always learn new things about them. So yeah, thank you so much.
That was a great introduction, Lior and Mason. So let's move ahead and give our viewers some insights about how did you all, decide to write your first book, which we will discuss more in detail as we go in depth in this podcast. So your first book that you've written together is Mastering NLP from Foundations to LLMs. And as a matter of fact, I have a copy of that book today, and we will discuss more about that. But like to hear from you guys first that how did you all decide to write this book, which is a very timely book, very apt book for the current situation?
Sure, I can start. So it's definitely been exciting. It's been a long journey, but how did it start? So I had a conversation with you, Ali, around the need for another good, strong technical book in the space. And you folks at that you have a lot of experience with technical books and what's out there and what's in the works and also what's missing and what the readers and the people are looking to learn more about. And you mentioned how NLP is something that is looking for more attention, more expertise. Now, this was before ChatGPT came out, and so this was still a niche, but this was a niche that was lacking a good technical book about the foundations and the hands-on, and also the math. And so that's how the idea was created. We brought Meysam along to also be a part of the team, and we put together a plan for making a book that would be very mathematical, very technical, and would cater to those folks who look to learn about the math and the statistics behind NLP. And we started that project, and then short after we started, ChatGPT came out, and all of a sudden NLP transitioned from being a niche to being very much at the center of what technical people are looking at. Not only folks in the machine learning space, but technical folks who weren't even involved with machine learning before, but had very strong, let's say, programming capabilities or research capabilities, and they were all of a sudden thinking, wait, there's so much demand and interest in LLMs and NLP. Let's see what that's about. And so the interest grew, and we found ourselves with a plan that was very mathematical, but we figured maybe we can pivot a bit and expand the scope to include more advanced topics, so to cater to the folks who are looking to learn about LLMs and machine learning, LLMs and advanced NLP as well. Now, since we couldn't have a 700-page book, then the trade-off that we made was to reduce the math, and that's how we were left with the plan to just have foundational math, basic common math, which is about some statistics, some linear algebra, so to understand metrics and vector manipulation, and some optimization, so to still have a good understanding of estimation theory. And from there, we moved on to the hands-on techniques that we had in traditional NLP, and then more advanced techniques around language models, and then large language models, and then we got to what we currently know is state-of-the-art capabilities like multi-agent systems. So it was really an ongoing evolution of listening to what folks are looking to read about, and that's how it came to be.
Yeah, and also we try to highlight the latest trends in NLP, as Lior mentioned, about the generative AI and conversational AI, which is becoming more and more interesting for the users. And also we try to provide the codes for the readers, because we believe that just reading the concept is not enough. So when we practice, we learn much more, and we try to add the code so the users and the readers can start practicing and understanding the concepts much better. Thanks to Lior for that.
Yeah, I think that's been an amazing journey. I think Lior and Meysam, from where we started, it was like we were doing things as we were looking at trends, we were looking at new things that were picking up in the industry. Earlier, we had a lot of focus on mathematics, but like Lior mentioned, LLMs picked up and a lot of NLP picked up, and we started to focus more and pivot more towards that. So that is classic listening to what the customers needed, what the readers needed, and that's how we probably have this book ready now, which is being applauded a lot amongst the readers. So yeah, I think that was a great start to the project. If I were to go deep now, to discuss about more of the core aspects of the book, like NLP and LLMs. So we know that the book has mathematical foundation, like Lior mentioned, which is aligned with what is needed for NLP and machine learning. But for listeners who might be new to this topic, can you explain why these understandings of foundation is crucial?
Yeah, sure. So the point is that understanding the mathematical foundations is essential, because it provides the basis of all NLP techniques. So The concepts like linear algebra, probability, and statistics are building blocks that allows us to develop and optimize NLP algorithms. So when we are working on machine learning and NLP models, because lots of the NLP models are basically kind of deep learning models and machine learning models. So when we are working with them, we are working on probabilities, working with matrices that are trying to different types, different layers
I
of
think
deep neural networks are just working with matrices, and we also have lots functions that we try to optimize. So when we know this concept better, we can be a real expert, not just a user. So if we don't know the math behind and the idea behind how a specific model is working, we will be just a simple user. If not, something goes wrong, or if the model doesn't work as expected, we have no idea what's happening. But when we understand what's happening behind the scene, then we will be the expert that can really tackle challenging problems. That's why we try to put the math in the book as well.
I think that's a great statement, Meysam, you made. Understanding what happens behind the scenes, that is very important, because a lot of people are, going with the LLM wave. They're trying to just pick it up as much as they can, but nobody's really paying as much emphasis of what happens behind the scene. So if something breaks, if your LLMs that you're trained with your data doesn't, give you an output that you were looking forward to, there is no way to understand why it is behaving in that way unless you understand the mathematics behind it. That's a good point, Mason, you made. Leo, would you have any views on this as well?
Sure. So to to build on top of what Meysam said. So when you know the math, and then also when you know the system design, or right even below that, the algorithmic reasoning, it gives you capabilities to do things that you would otherwise get stuck at. So, for instance, sanity checks. It's an easy one. You put together a new solution, a new model. One of the things that you have to do to check yourself, or working collaboratively to check others when you review their code, is sanity checks. Now, when you know the formula and the reasoning that the design is based on, you know where to go with sanity checks. So, for instance, when you want to think about, okay, what kind of input do I know for a fact is supposed to get, you know, uh, to get a no in my classifier, classifying between yes and no, or to get an empty signal in my output, or to get a blank string in my sec to sec model. You need to know the logic to begin with. You need to understand and say to yourself, oh, this is built on the logic of maximum likelihood. So I know how it's supposed to behave in such and such extreme scenario. You know the edge cases. So these types of things are exactly the types of things that you understand when you know the math. And then later on, when you say, okay, it's behaving in a way that isn't optimal. It's providing too long of output. It's providing a strong bias towards one particular class. Then you also have the ability to understand how to adjust for that. Understanding something as common as class imbalance. I trained it and it's leaning towards one particular case, and then you say to yourself, "Oh, wait, I trained, a model to detect potential tumor, and it has a strong bias towards a no, not a tumor. Why does it have that bias?" And you say to yourself, "Oh, well, I trained it on cases where 99% of the patients were healthy because most patients don't have tumors." So the ability to understand that the model may over emphasize the majority class and make up for that is something, that's an example of understanding the math. You can adjust the training set, or you can leave the training set as is and provide additional weighting on that class that's a small class. That's math. That's understanding the formulas and the way that the different classes are weighted. And so all of that comes from understanding the math and the reasoning, which allows you to provide responsible solutions.
That's very important. So what I understand is that if you don't understand the maths behind it, you kind of not in the driving seat. So there could be hiccups in your data set, which could lead to a false positive if you're running LLMs, and it could predict. It could have its own confirmation biases because of the data. If you don't understand the maths, it's very important. I think that's a very important point highlighted. So if I were to take a step back, guys, and if I were to ask you a very fundamental question, uh, if you were to explain it to somebody who is new to this field, why are LLMs becoming so popular, and what exactly you could say a reason is for their popularity in recent times?
I can start. So I see the different realms and contributions that LLMs are making. And these are different in the sense that they touch on different phases of the way that we work, the way that we function, some as individuals, some as professionals, and some on the organizational level, so not even just individuals. And so each one, I think, would have a different answer. Also, I think each one would prevail differently. It could be that LLMs would eventually completely overtake one particular one, like the personal space, and not others. So let's start with one example, which is a personal space. So people use LLMs, and ChatGPT in particular is pretty popular. People use it for personal needs. They use it for help coming up with information that they're lacking when they're trying to learn about one particular thing. They kind of replacing Google search. They use it to rephrase their wording. They're looking to help them ideate and so on. One particular trend that I expect to continue to grow is the personal assistant. And so, if we were to ask what kind of contribution can LLMs bring to us in the personal assistant space, then I always like to use analogies from the past of things that actually worked and actually prevailed. I want to take a very limited one, a very particular one, and that's the digital calendar. So the Google Calendar or the one that you have on iPhone or whatnot. Before you had that, if you wanted to properly organize your day, you would need to pay a lot of attention to it to make sure that you're properly scheduling and planning ahead, that you don't have conflicts. And if someone from the outside, spouse, manager, anybody else, a physician appointment wanted to come in, you would need to properly sync and make sure that it would happen. And so there would be generally two types of people: those who actually put on all that time into that, and those who didn't and didn't have as good of a schedule because it's a lot of work. What are you going to do? Digital calendars came in, and now we know what everything looks like. It's all organized. You don't need to remember anything. And if something comes along, like an appointment 2 months out, all you do is open your calendar to book it. And if there's a conflict, you already noticed. So all of a sudden, we talk about something very complex to become very simple, and as if it's automated away. Personal assistants that are built on LLMs would take that another step forward. They won't just manage your calendar. They'll manage your ideas as to what you want to do. They'll manage your intentions, and they'll be able to provide the answers. So instead of you sending someone an invite and you basically communicate with their calendar, so to know if they have time or not, you're gonna have your personal assistant communicate with their personal assistant. If you want to schedule even something as simple as going out to a restaurant, then you'll know when they're free. You'll know what kind of food they want because your personal assistant knows them already. You'll know where they'll be available and when they'll be available. And, again, I'll give an example from scheduling, but this will go on to business meetings, business initiatives, travel, family activities. So this would go on beyond just scheduling and beyond just activities. So I know I spoke a lot about just one particular thing, but here's an example of personal assistant and where LLMs can bring us to the next level. This can propagate to a lot of other functionalities. Automating away is something that we're seeing a lot of companies being very interested about. So to become more efficient. I'm going to stop here because we can discuss this particular thing for hours. I want to let Meysam also give some ideas.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you, Lior. So to add something that Lior mentioned, different tasks are being possible with LLMs. And I believe that it basically comes from transfer learning, because when we want to have something that's a machine learning model, deep learning model that is capable of doing amazing tasks, we know that the bigger the model is, the better results is. And when we have bigger models, we need lots of data to train the model, and it was not able and possible for lots of people. So what LLMs did was that the big companies like Meta, OpenAI trained the LLMs with huge amount of data, and now we can simply fine tune them for a specific task with very limited number of training data. We can get amazing results from them. That's why they are super exciting for everyone, because if we want to do something from scratch, it might take millions of dollars for the cost of training the model, and it's almost impossible for majority of even the organizations, not even the regular people. So that's one of the big benefits that LLMs provided to us, and also the conversations that we can have for with LLMs. Actually, it's one of the exciting things about them, that lots of tasks that the the companies were trying to solve for the customer interactions became possible with the communications that we can do with LLMs, and also the RAGs that definitely we will talk about it in the rest of the conversation. So I think they are amazingly exciting technology.
I think great examples, Lior and Meysam. To sum it up, we've had chatbots in past, but LLMs are pretty different than that. I think it's more like an analogy that Lior mentioned, assistant, an intelligent assistant that can work with you, that can help you in specific tasks. And Mason's point is also very important. Transfer learning is something which has also improved LLMs a lot. We don't have to spend a lot of resources in training LLMs from scratch, which is a lot of not cost effective and very expensive as well in terms of computation power. So great points, guys. So moving back to your book. So in your book, one major USP is that you all are sharing your experiences and real world application use cases in it. So if I were to ask you, what would be Lior and Mason's favorite use case that you've shared in the book that you want to talk about more deeply?
Yeah, so I can start. And one fascinating application is in healthcare that we know in the US, in the healthcare industry, uh, doctors and nurses are writing huge amount of notes about the patients. And with the benefit of LLMs, we can analyze the patient data and assist in diagnosis of the disease, or they can help to predict the patient's outcomes by extracting such information from the notes. So it's very critical in healthcare and other companies that I'm sure that Lior can have great examples as well.
So my example for use case, and again, we have a lot of great ones, and definitely the healthcare ones. I feel like always the most exciting ones, because everybody's looking to to contribute to healthcare. That's honorable cause, and also a very tough one from an aspect of responsibility. The one that I like is the multi-agent one that we put together. So this is in chapter 9. Multi-agent is really something that we saw come together as we were towards the end of the book. So much so that we actually wanted to pause on chapter 9, finish the rest of the book, and then finish chapter 9 last. So we'll have all the most recent examples there. So chapter 9 is really the most up-to-date one because it has the most recent stuff. So we have prompt compression, which is awesome. But I'm going to talk about multi-agents. And now with multi-agents, what we're seeing different places trying to do is to, you have several agents. Each one is an LLM, could be all the same LLM, could be all GPT. I'm sorry, could be all GPT-4 or 4.0. play different roles. And for each one of those designated LLMs, you provide a different system prompt. So one is designated to be the programmer. The other one is designated to be the QA engineer. And also when it comes to ChatGPT, you can assign them to have a Python environment on OpenAI's servers. So you tell the programmer, this is the program I want you to write, and you tell the QA, validate the programmer, and you see errors, you see mistakes in the code. I mean, if you now ask ChatGPT for code, it may get it wrong, like having the wrong parentheses there, and it's going to throw an error. It doesn't validate itself. But when you have two agents, the QA engineer takes the code, runs it locally, because again, OpenAI lets you run Python on their servers, and tells it, oh, I got this error. It just tells the programmer, and they iterate between each other, and you can see that as an example. So that's one example of how you can have more. What did we really do by that? We actually got higher quality insights, and it's validated, and also this would reduce not just mistakes, but also hallucinations, which is one particular type of mistakes that, we're all concerned about because they seem legitimate, they seem real. So that's where multi-agents are coming in, giving more reliable outputs. Another example we have there with multi-agents is we gave the multi-agent team designated roles for business decision making, and we gave them outcomes, statistical outcomes from a analysis that we put together. And we told them, these are the trade-offs. We got this kind of precision rating, this much time, this much money. What do you think? Is this a good system that we want to deploy? And they provide really high-level judgment to say, yeah, this makes sense. Indeed, you lose a bit with precision, but you gain a lot with, so on, with speed, or with, in our case, it was money, financial expenses. And it said, oh, this looks like a reasonable trade-off can be considered. And then we wanted to test and see how well those models are really doing. So we ruined the results of the experiment and gave very low precision, still the same cost and time. And when we gave this to the team of agents, they said, oh, no, this is a bad system. You got a very bad trade-off here. So we were like, okay, it's not just quick to agree. It actually applies judgment that would be relevant. This kind of automation is something we haven't seen before. If you want to automate your analysis, you could. It's not new. You can do this, and your entire pipeline runs, and you have results in front of you. But it doesn't suggest conclusions. We present this to the executive or the stakeholder team, and they provide insights. Here you see a case where the LLM kind of bounces ideas off itself and provides an insight and an idea. And this is a new level of value that we can produce and bring to, in this case, the world of analysis.
Actually, I would like to add a few sentences to what Lior mentioned. That's a very exciting topic about multi-agent, and I have seen lots of papers related to that. So, for example, lots of times we see that people are complaining that the problem with Gen AI is the hallucination, and the model is producing wrong data output. And one technique is that people can use two models, that the second model is just fact checking the first model and make sure that the model output is correct. So that's a very exciting topic for someone who is interested in it, and I'm sure that people will use it much more in the future. That was a great point that you mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
I agree. I think this is cutting edge because, like Lior mentioned, it was easier or possible to do analysis or automate a lot of things in your workflows, but getting opinions or getting cognition involved is something which is very exciting. There's a lot of talk that we are heading towards AGI, and it looks like a step towards that. And I am pretty sure Skynet is also possibility pretty soon. So these examples that you shared, Lior and Mason, they are very transformative. I think businesses or people who are in positions of taking decisions in regards to technology in their companies, they will find it really appealing. The multi-agent or the healthcare sector that you described. One question which comes to my mind is the future of LLMs and NLP. Like this is something it's very hard to predict because, like you mentioned, the industry is updating and upgrading at a very high pace. But what do you all think is the future of NLP and LLMs, if I were to ask you?
Sure, I can start. So yes, we're seeing different trends with how LLMs are farther being utilized in an algorithmic manner. There are different expansions. One particular one that I noticed, and it came up very strongly in the interviews chapter when we interviewed some of the senior folks in AI there, was the use of multiple LLMs. Now, we just mentioned multiple LLMs in the context of multi-agent, but that's just one use case. And then when we had interviews with the senior folks who are really thinking about taking things to the next steps, we saw several different use cases for using multiple LLMs. One of them is the one that just Mason just emphasized, was the use of more than one LLM to validate itself, and by doing so, you get higher quality, more reliable, etc. Great. There are several others. One example is using different LLMs. So the one example I mentioned was you use the same LLM, let's say GPT-4o, as one agent and as another agent, and the only difference between these two is a system prompt, and that's how they have different tasks. You can also use different LLMs and they can complement each other. And then all of a sudden, we're talking about complementing. So you can do this and have a committee of LLMs, KLLMs committee, and there you have different capabilities coming up and they complement each other. A different use case we saw was not just for optimizing the performance of the response, but optimizing the so many other factors that go into the business setting of having a system. So we know about load balancing when you have a communication system, but there's also different balances that can come into play. So there's cost, there's speed, there is a quality, like we just mentioned, and we're starting to hear about switching systems. We're talking about companies who put together a switching system that makes a decision for every prompt that comes in from the users and decides which LLM to utilize based on the complexity of the prompt and also the other resources that are available and the importance of getting it fast and a few other things. So one LLM is expensive. It takes it takes 5 seconds to respond, but it has the highest quality. But this prompt coming in is about something super important. Let's say it's about an agreement, a business agreement. You have to be super thorough. While another model is small, cost maybe near nothing, and would have a split second response. And that would make sense because the incoming prompt is about generating a statement from the company, something that's very easy to pull and put together. You don't need a smart LLM, you just need to be able to pull that from the right spot. And here are two very different examples of complexity and time and so on. And we're talking about switching systems that are able to optimize for that. And if you right now you hear companies saying that one of the biggest hurdles that they have around utilizing LLMs is, for instance, cost, then we're talking about a way that you can reduce costs using resources that are easily available for you, like those very cheap and available LLMs, because perhaps not all the use cases that you have need that very big hammer. They just need a very small one. And so the use of multiple LLMs for different cases, and in particular for switching to optimize resources and performance, I think that's something that's very exciting and it's going to help a lot of companies promote their utilization of AI.
Yeah, I can say that I also have noticed that trend that at some point companies were just focusing on building bigger and bigger LLMs, but recently different companies are trying to focus on how to efficiently use smaller models that are uh, as efficient as bigger models or pretty close to them. So as Lior mentioned, not always we need the best quality, but sometimes the throughput is very important for us. So it is something that people are focusing on. And also training more efficient models is something that I believe that we can expect, and it's something that I think it's natural that the models and the companies are trying to build better models. So that's something that we will see. Also, multimodal LLMs is another trend that I strongly believe that uh, we will see that much more in the future. So right now, what when we hear LLMs, we mostly think about, okay, processing text, but the models that are having more than one types of inputs beside text, such as images or audios or other source of data, even structured data, and something like that will become more uh, common for us because there are lots of use cases for them. So let's say that we have different types of images in the news, and we want to uh, decide if the image is the best image or not, or something like that. So, or have description about the images that we see over the internet. This is something that will be the next trend, and also their output will become much more closer to the human. So I think the LLMs already passed the Turing test, if I'm not mistaken. I heard that, but we will go much beyond that, and we will have much nicer conversation with the LLMs, that maybe even we can have LLM body, that when we have issues and we want to talk to someone, instead of the friends that we are calling, we can call an LLM agent, and such a friend, we can have a friendly conversation with them. So I think there are a lot to see in the future.
I think great points. I think something that Lior mentioned, the committee of LLMs, is very exciting because, like he mentioned, there are specific tasks an LLM is good at, and combining and making it into a committee will really be helpful to remove any more confirmation biases that exist despite data cleaning, etc. So, very important, and also the aspects that Mason mentioned are very important, that how it can also contribute in two ways, like they are trying to become more humanly, where you have a conversation with an LLM when you're feeling low. I think they have passed the Turing test, Mason. I think last time I checked, they did pass the Turing test, so which is quite a big feat if you ask me. So now let's move to a very important part, which is the fun part, engaging with the audiences. So what I did was I did ask some of the readers of your book. So the book we're talking about, guys, is the NLP book, Mastering NLP Foundations to LLM. Some of the readers, so we got the questions for the authors. So I'll pick the most relevant ones. So Sarah from New York, she asks, what advice would you give someone who is just starting out in NLP and AI? So you would like to take this one?
Sure, sure. So I think the advice is different based on what is the background, right? So I think that if someone wanted to start with NLP and AI, they should ideally have a background in technical skills. So some math and some coding are relevant. If they don't, I think the first step would be to get introduced with those. So there are different ways to approach getting introduced with those, but the two major ones are either full-on degree and going to school. And different ones are boot camps that we're seeing that are several months long and are already getting folks very well introduced with these topics. Once you have a good sense of confidence with coding and you're able to reason things using math, then when looking to open up to these particular fields, machine learning and NLP, then you want to start with the math that leads to those, and the foundational one. We bring you all the relevant topics, and we don't expand. We introduce you to them, but then expanding on them would be useful. And from there, I think it makes sense to start having courses that are relevant to them. Now, our book would cover everything on a high level that these courses would do, and our book can help you direct what you learn towards being applied, being hands-on, and actually bringing something to the table when you wanna come and interview for such roles. But different people would need different levels of elaborations, and that's why one should decide between whether a book is enough or a full-on course. Conversely, if we're talking about a person who's already experienced, they've been coding for a while, they feel comfortable with mathematical modeling, they've given the basics a shot, and they know about classification, they know about linear regression and how to apply those. And our book is something that you can take and just bring your capabilities forward with applying the codes that we have put together. So we have 11 notebooks. They're very vast and very rich. Some of them are complete end-to-end pipelines, just like one needs to develop when in the business setting and having to put together a product. And so you are able to understand what it is that people would expect you to do if you wanted to be valuable in either the research setting or the business setting and put together machine learning solutions. And so all of that is to say, if you're very advanced stage and your ability to code, then that book may be all the delta that you need. If you're not, this book will help you understand what it is you want to get in order to promote yourself and get to the level that is expected of you as a professional. Because the things you see in the book are the things you're going to be expected to know when you come to the job interview and you have a discussion with your would-be manager. That's what we had in mind. We wanted to make people ripe for being able to apply these and provide value to the companies.
Sounds good. And I also would like to add that first, all of our assumption is based that you can code. So the person who wants to work on ML or NLP should be completely comfortable with coding, because it's all about that. And also, uh, always keep learning. As Lior mentioned, during the writing the book, we noticed that the trend has been changed. Lots of new technologies has been developed, and we had to change the way that we were writing the book. And it was not in a very long time period. That if you want to be updated, this field is evolving fast, and you should always keep reading and try to be engaged in the communities, online communities, that they are talking about the new developments. Try to read the papers if you want to be a little bit more toward the research or uh, other communities, and try to always go with the pace, because new technologies are coming every week. I can say, if not every month, we will see them a lot. So yeah.
I think that's an interesting question. Like Lior mentioned, a lot will depends around where you are at. If you are good at coding, you understand the basics of machine learning and NLP, you will get the most out of it and follow what Meysam and Lior have suggested, and it will get you places. Okay, moving to the next question, guys. We have a question from Jake. He's from London, and he asks, "What are some of the ethical considerations we should keep in mind when working with LLMs?" Another very important question, because LLMs seems to be very powerful. So with great powers comes great responsibilities. So Mason, would you like to share some views on ethical considerations?
Sure. So that's actually a very great question. And there are some considerations that we are extremely important, and we need to keep them in mind. One of them is the bias in data. So let's say that uh, we are using some training data to train the LLM models, and the data is always biased. So based on how we provide the data that we provide to the model, the output of model will be different. So let's say that when we are training the model, and we say that, okay, the men are driving the car to the home, and the women are riding the bicycle to the home, and then we ask a question from the LLM that, okay, who is driving the car to the home? It always say men, not woman. So this is something that basically comes from the training data. And if the training data is biased, the output will be also biased. This is something that we need to keep in mind. The other important issue is the privacy concern. So when we are training the LLM model, unlike the other type of machine learning and deep learning model, in the other models, when we provide some training data and we train the model, we are done. The model can have just the output for us and the prediction for us, and it doesn't reveal anything about the training data. So we were very comfortable with training the model with any type of data that we had. But it's not the case with the LLMs. When we are training them with the notes and different types of text, they have the capability of remembering that. So if we train them, or even sometimes fine tuning them with the very critical data and the private data, there is a chance that they reveal that for the other users. That's something that we should always keep that in mind and be cautious about that LLMs are fast learners, and they can remember and reveal that. Also, the potential thing that we should keep in mind is the potential misuse of AI generated content, that we hear a lot about that uh, it can be used for generating the fake reports, fake news, or any type of misleading information. And there should be also some sort of rules or uh, techniques to prevent it's developing as well. So these are the concepts that I think we should keep in mind.
Cool. I can continue from where Meysam left, and basically say that if we think about the way that Meysam presented the answer, you can say that there are two major parts to thinking through how to make models work in an ethical and responsible way. One is the way that you design them, impacting the models, making sure that the models suit what you deem to be acceptable, responsible, and so on. And the other one is how do you deal and work with these models after the fact. And it's important to think in these two different ways, because most people don't wear both these hats. So some people are on the design side. They're researchers. They are developers of the models, and they need to think how to design a model in a way that would be responsible, compliant, and so on. And we saw many shortcomings there. So biased data is the most common one, because data has a tendency to be biased, and we know that data is the most important, most critical aspect of whether the model is biased or not. And so, I'll talk less about that part because Meysam elaborated on that part. The latter is where a lot of people find themselves now, wearing the hat of, I have an LLM in my hands, and I now need to make sure that it's used in the right way. Most of these people are companies. They're companies. They're saying, we want to embed, we want to leverage, we want to use AI. We have these models. We don't have the ability to change them as much as we have the ability to control them and to guardrail them. And that's where we're seeing that comes in. That means that you want to use human oversight and judgment that would then be an aftermarket, an afterthought to the LLM that makes sure that things are inbound. And we're seeing a lot of thoughts being put there, how to make sure that the LLMs adhere to compliance, adhere to what the users or clients or whoever the end user is, what they need to see, what they want to see, what is appropriate. This may also vary based on different jurisdictions. Not every country is the same. Not every government is the same. It's impacted by culture. It's impacted by different things. It may be impacted by different age groups because of the way that your population is divided for your particular company or whichever one it is. And so that's something that we're seeing a lot of. And it's really about being able to adjust the way that you control your LLMs. And so what it is about letting these companies, letting these people who implement the LLMs have control over how the LLM is being used and how its answers are being exposed. And we're seeing a lot of growth in that area in the startup sectors of startups that are building an additional layer that's protecting what's coming out of the LLM before it's being exposed to the end user by implementing and applying compliance and other guardrails that the company is looking to enforce.
Good discussion there. Good points raised by both of y'all. So let's now dive deeper into the trends surrounding large language models. So we've been seeing a lot of new advancements coming our way, a lot of headlines, be it from Sam Altman or be it from OpenAI team, Mira, etc. So any other latest advancements in LLMs that you particularly find interesting or exciting that you want to discuss with the viewers?
So indeed, many come to mind. I feel that the one that I find the most interesting is the one that I already started mentioning earlier, which is around how it's going to serve the personal users. So the personal assistant. Meysam touched on that a bit as well, but where it seems to be going is that it's going to be able to serve you as an assistant and an advisor and someone who knows you very well, and that can really expand to a lot of great capabilities. So it's about helping you remember things that happened at work, so to be able to put things better together. There's a difference between whether you remember how things went the last time you did such a project and you were surprised or not surprised by the different obstacles. All right, the last time we needed to think ahead of time about opening that data stream because that actually requires 2 weeks worth of approvals. It's almost a simple example that distinguishes between people with good memory and people with bad memory. But then when you have an assistant that is able to be on top of what you're doing and pull these things for you, then all of a sudden you're equal or even better than those who had a good memory before. And again, the analogy between good memory and bad memory is like the analogy I had before of people who are on top of their schedule and calendar when it was just pen and paper, and those who weren't. Those who weren't didn't have an organized schedule. They didn't have the advantage. Now all of a sudden you're equal and it's automated away. So the personal assistant being able to have endless memory for you that is super useful because it knows when to pull from it, that is able to advise you on things that would usually take a lot of time. Something as simple as picking a birthday gift from my mom can take me so long because I need to remember and ask and check and whatnot. But then when I have it all together and I feel like I've done this every year, but it took me only 1 month to forget it, but then a year went by till the next birthday. If my assistant is able to remember what I did last year, it will be like, oh, you remember that running shoes is something that she liked, but she already had some. Why don't you check and see if she needs new ones now? Things like that. The most simple day-to-day tasks all of a sudden reduce your chores of catching up with things from taking 2 hours a day to maybe taking 15 minutes a day. And I believe that can go a long way. This, of course, translates to the way that we do work, like I started. And once you translate to the way that you do work, then there's a very large discussion around how companies can utilize it there. For instance, and some of them are not so, some of them are a little scary to think about. For instance, if we know that you can improve your work as an employee by utilizing a personal assistant, then you basically find yourself using that personal assistant in the work setting, which means it's a personal assistant that your company lets you use. You're not going to use personal assistants outside of work. So the personal assistant really belongs to your workspace. So when you leave, that personal assistant and all the notes, they stay at work. So you don't take all the knowledge with you, which is a great capability that a company now has to not lose all the knowledge and know-how that you have because they have your personal assistant. But then you can ask, well, if they have your personal assistant, are you as useful? Can they all of a sudden have an army of personal assistants? And then we're starting to talk about how does that affect people who have the skills and are teaching the LLMs those skills, and all of a sudden a lot of that work may be automated away. We're talking about how the AI capabilities are transitioning the workspace. And while it's easy to hypothesize what jobs can be most vulnerable, it's harder to understand what new jobs are going to come in to replace those, because people want to know, if someone's going to take something's going to take my job, fine, I'll adjust, but adjust to what? And so these are all some questions that are, you get to them very quickly. I believe the capabilities are great. I believe the trade-offs are not completely clear. But these are the things that I think I'll be looking to hear about the most. How the personal assistant, the personal extension of you, can help you, but also change the way that you prioritize your decisions career-wise.
I think that's a good summary, Lior. If I were to ask you guys, so we've seen ChatGPT, textual, LLMs, and we've seen some that are good at image generation and all that stuff. What do you all think are some new applications which are going to emerge soon?
That's a great question. Actually, we are already seeing LLMs that are being used in creative industries such as content creation or generate articles, stories. Actually, for the kids, I heard that lots of books are being written by the LLMs for the kids because the text is short and simple to write. So I think this is something that is already emerging. Another emerging application is the personalized education that the LLMs can be customized to for the learning of the different pupil, and it can be very beneficial because personal tutors are extremely expensive, and if we can have personalized the LLMs for different pupils to teach them, it can be extremely useful for different pupils. So these are some of the emerging techniques, emerging ones that I can think about. And also, as we discussed before, multimodal LLMs are also another type of models that will become more popular in the near future, I believe.
I agree. I think those are very interesting use cases, Mason, that you mentioned, and something which comes up soon will be exciting to see. So, moving on to the next question. Given the advancements, do you guys think that the biggest challenge in developing and deploying LLMs at scale, what would be the essential challenges if there is an industry or a company is trying to, develop and deploy LLMs at scale? What would be their challenges?
So the biggest ones that come to mind are probably cost and risk. Cost is because LLMs typically, you would typically pay by the use, and it may even have double aspects to it. One, the fact that most companies work on the cloud setting, then you pay by the use of the cloud regardless of what you use it for, right? In the past, you would buy a server, on-prem server, or whatever you needed, and it would be a one-time expense, and then the utilization would just be about maintenance. But here with cloud, we're talking about higher costs that they accumulate, and then we're seeing similar payment models with most of the LLMs, like ChatGPTs by Azure and by OpenAI, because you pay by the use. So cost is something that we're seeing accumulate very fast. We hear stories, in the NLP community space, we hear stories about experiments and so on in different business settings that have some cost, and then when it's being deployed, then the cost accumulates so greatly. And so cost is something that we're seeing becoming a serious problem, and there can be several ways to alleviate that could take on. One of them is that cost would continue to be reduced. So fine, that's something that's gradual. The other one is potentially the ability to host LLMs. We're seeing some open source, or rather open use LLMs becoming more popular, but also better, so that you can deploy in your development environment, which may be the cloud, but then you at least don't have to pay the other LLM provider for the use. So that's another aspect. And then the third one is efficiency. So efficiency in the way that you prompt is something that can go a long way. We identified one particular algorithm. It's called LLM Lingua by Microsoft. They put it together. It's fascinating. We had to have it in the book, so we have a whole experiment and notebook dedicated to that on chapter 9. And what they do there is that they compress, they reduce the size of the prompt based on the question that's being asked, such that whatever is sent to the LLM is only what's necessary out of the prompt. So you see prompts that have several pages long worth of text because you need to provide context, or you're using a RAG and it pulls all of those pages because it's all relevant. And then LLM Lingua makes sure to compress all of that to a size that's relevant, and then only sends that. And what happens is the cost of the tokens that you pay for is reduced tremendously. I mean, you can see the experiment we put together. It's just a general use case that we use. We didn't choose a use case that lends itself best to this compression, and it worked tremendously. And so we're seeing that as another aspect. People starting to understand that when you use those prompts and RAGs, you may find yourself sending very long prompts to the LLM, much longer than you need to, but you can do some pre-processing to that prompt and reduce the cost tremendously. We've seen tremendous cost reduced there. And so these three aspects, the companies reducing the rate, the ability to move to either on-prem or on-cloud hosted LLMs, and the ability to be smarter with prompt usage, and in particular compressing prompts in an intelligent manner. These three can help alleviate cost. The other one I spoke about is risk, so I won't take too long with this answer, but risk, that's another obvious one, right? We know that legal risk and other risks are out there. Whether it's legal is I think the one that comes to mind, but basically the risk of making a mistake while basing your decisions on LLMs are great, and most companies don't care to take that risk today, and so they're being careful. And I think that's the right way to go about it. And they're looking to make sure that the LLMs are able to adhere to their guardrails and compliance.
Yeah, and another challenge that I would like to men. Sorry, I was hearing a lot of echo. I still can hear it.
Maybe I should mute.
Okay, yeah, it works. So another challenge is the integration. So deploying LLMs in real world applications often require seamless integration with existing systems and workflow, and it can be very complex and time consuming. So companies have different types of applications that have been using them for a long time, and now when we want to uh, use the LLMs, we need to have some sort of changes in those applications that requires lots of uh, work and consideration. So that's another challenge that I like to add to what Lior mentioned.
I think those are valid challenges. Scale, cost, and integration issues, data protection, privacy are some important challenges that are discussed. So now let's shift gears, guys, and also talk about broader market trends. Because everybody is aware that LLMs are the next big thing and they are here to stay. But we don't want to miss out on other key trends that are upcoming in AI and machine learning, which is complementary. So what, according to you guys, are some interesting trends that you all see in AI and machine learning space?
Cool. I can go. Just making sure. Do I still have echo? Do you still hear echo? Okay, because I can't switch mics now. So outside of the particular design of LLMs, we're seeing several broader trends, and everybody's seeing what's happening with different companies that are enabling hardware that is dedicated to to computations, and in particular parallel computing. And that's something that's emerging greatly. But everybody understands that the big, tremendous delta in the computation space is going to be quantum computing. We're seeing major strides being done in that space. And the one particular roadmap that I like to track is Google's. They have been very precise with their expectation that they forecasted several years ago going forward and where things are headed. And so, to our understanding, in a few years, we're going to start seeing quantum computing taking over different computations. Now, that would require a lot of adjustment on the design of computers and also the design of software, so to best adhere to those capabilities, because we're no longer just talking about deterministic ordinary binary bits, and that is going to affect everything. Amongst everything is the very time-consuming computation of deep learning neural networks. And we're starting to already see research being produced about neural networks that are dedicated to quantum computing design, quantum convolutional neural networks, and they have a hybrid design of several ordinary layers and several quantum layers that utilize the quantum computing. That is going to speed things up. And when you speed things up, because it's architectured in the best way, ideally, then we're talking about things that take long, and all of a sudden they're taking much less. So, I remember some work that we've done, Meysam and I, which was around, we fine-tuned a language model, and then we needed to take it to the next step. So we needed to retrain it, so the entire layer structure. And then we realized that it's not well designed for the data that we had there, which was cancer language data. And so we had to adjust the tokenizer. So, Meysam was focusing on adjusting the tokenizer. And then all of a sudden we realized if you want to retrain your tokenizer for your ontology, for your type of in-house data, and then to retrain the model, this was vanilla BERT, then you need weeks. You need weeks, and we had the GPUs, right? It wasn't like we had CPUs. And now all of a sudden with quantum computer, we're talking about a completely different setting where you run it, and based on the different capabilities that you have, you'll be done by the next day. It may even be done in like an hour. Depends on what you're doing. So I think quantum computing is going to give us the next delta in that space.
So another trend that is increasing, getting attention is the explainable AI. So large language models are great, and similar to other deep learning models, they can give us great outputs. But when we are dealing with the critical decisions, just having the output is not enough. We want to be able to understand why we see this output, and we should be able to explain that. And explainable AI has been out there for a long time, but not for large language models. Companies are working on that, and researchers, but it needs lots of more work to be completely clear and usable for everyone. So I believe that it's going to be another trend related to the large language models to make them explainable. So this is something that we will see more in the near future.
I think great answer, both Lior and Meysam. You might have seen the news that there have been issues regarding chat GPT's copyright infringement and other large language models facing issues with those aspects. So my question to you will be around privacy and transparency. Uh, they are certainly crucial, if you ask me. So, what is the regulatory landscape that you all think is evolving right now as we speak for this technology? Because it's so new for the regulators as well. So, what is the current regulatory landscape for this technology?
So what we're seeing is that different jurisdictions in the U.S. and Europe and Japan are moving forward, have moved forward, and already released their acts and their documents around what they approve of and what they demand. We're seeing also differences in how each jurisdiction allows you to utilize personal data. So we're seeing a big difference between Japan, um, Europe, and the U.S. And then within the U.S., we're seeing different states with different regulations. So this has really become a scenario where different jurisdictions would have different rules. And if someone wants to deploy their LLMs, sell their LLMs, develop their products there, they're going to need to adhere to different regulations. So much in theory. In practice, it's very much possible that businesses will move away from using their capabilities in different regulations. And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see big companies like Apple and others are saying, we're going to deploy ABC, but not in Europe. We're going to hold off on that because of the way that that looks. Now, understand that this is probably not what regulators had in mind. Regulators are looking for the best the best situation for their people, for their citizens. They want to make sure that they're protected while being able to leverage all the great capabilities that everybody else does. But then, if a company is saying, "Oh, we're just not going to release our capabilities in your jurisdiction because it's we were facing a tough battle there," then that really is not that wasn't the intention. So I think it's interesting to keep track and seeing how things progress with regards to what companies are allowed to use in different jurisdictions and how companies are acting based on that, because adhering to the rules of the jurisdiction is perhaps a good scenario at times, but simply removing yourself from those markets just out of the difficulty of seeing how you would adhere to those regulations. I find that to be an unusual act that may mean that things gonna have to change in order for everybody to get a good solution. The good solution being the citizens are able to utilize all the capabilities without being put at risk.
That's a great point that Lior mentioned. And also, I would like to add that there is a push toward creating standards for fairness, transparency, and accountability by the government. But how it will work uh, with the big companies, as Leo mentioned, it's unclear, and we should wait to see how the big companies are going to react on that, because they are the big players of the LLMs in the current time. So we should wait and see.
I think important points mentioned by both of y'all. Regulatory compliances and changes are, on the forefront when it comes to big companies because of the previous issue that we've had with certain technologies. So it will be interesting to see how that pans up for everybody. So let's move to the future directions and innovation aspect. If I were to ask you, what are the new emerging topics that are cutting edge in AI and NLP that you are most excited or passionate about? Since you guys are experts in the field, you might have access to more cutting edge news, research papers, etc., through your experiences. So, what are some emerging topics in AI and NLP that you are most excited about?
That's a good question. Actually, I think one of the emerging topics is the intersection of NLP and augmented reality. And combining the technologies could lead to innovative applications in the areas like real time translation and virtual assistants that Leo also mentioned about that. And we are all excited about that. So these are some of the new technologies that I'm really excited about them.
Cool. So, I think that one thing that we're all very excited to see being promoted by AI is healthcare. Healthcare as a whole, and in particular, diseases that can benefit from more and better data. One particular one that comes to mind is cancer. With cancer, we know it's a big problem because it is one of the most significant diseases that causes deaths, and it's not one disease, right? It's many diseases, and so that means that there are many slices to the data, and it affects people differently. It affects different people differently, and being able to optimize care using better data management and better data management is probably going to come from an intelligent ability to sift through what's relevant and surface that to the researchers, surface that to the caregivers, care providers, and to the patients themselves as well, to the extent that it's being detected in time, and then if it's being detected in time, then being treated properly. And let's face it, there are more components to beating cancer, but these two are super important. There are many cancers that are treatable if caught in time, just they're not caught in time because you don't see symptoms before stage 4. But if it's in stage 4, then you're not going to be able to treat it properly. And so detecting in time and then being able to apply treatment is going to be significant. And then if we do that, and we're going to do that, I don't know if it's going to take a decade or more, but we're going to do that, and we're going to see tremendous improvements in the way that we catch and then treat cancers, then people are going to live longer. People are already living longer. But then when people live longer, we know that the next bottleneck to quality of life is brain health. Brain health is, well, that's more than a decade away for us to completely figure out. Brain is still an enigma to us in many aspects. And so brain health would be the next thing to determine that the extended lifespan is also a quality life. And there too, I believe that LLMs and AI in general would probably have a tremendous effect on understanding what causes brain to deteriorate and then how to handle that. Also, one can hypothesize that perhaps the personal assistant can leverage a person's capabilities and so really help them perform in a better capability as if they had a healthier brain. Again, I give the example of someone who doesn't have a good memory, but then your personal assistant has tremendous memory. So it goes both ways, because on one hand it complements you, on the other hand, if you don't use your brain as much because you rely on something that's external, that also is can backfire on your health brain. But these two things, the ability to cure complex diseases, cancer in particular, and then the ability to understand the brain better so that the extended lifespan is a quality life that people would want to have. These are the two most exciting and honorable, I believe, causes that we can see coming from AI.
I think really interesting examples there, Lior and Meysam. I think even I'm very interested about understanding how it can improve the quality of life for a lot of people. That will be the major impact AI brings for humanity. If it can successfully improve the quality of life. We're starting to see certain changes where we have personal assistants now, which can help a lot of people. Some people who are facing issues with disability are also trying to use it to improve their quality of life. So that is a very important part AI could do. Coming to the next question, which I get asked a lot from tech professionals and business owners, is how do they exactly leverage the AI trend effectively? So we talk about a lot of applications and use cases of AI, but as a tech professional or a business owner or people who are working in business professionals, how can they leverage AI effectively is one question.
How can they leverage AI effectively? So are we talking about on how one applies, like on the technical side, or how one leverages, like on the business side within their business, or are we talking both?
I think it could be a mixed bag, but focusing more on the technical side would be helpful because we
Oh,
have a lot of viewership from technical professionals.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. So, okay, fine. So that's much easier for Mason and I to answer because we've done that. Each of us at some point in our career made a conscious decision to focus on a particular field. I still remember what made me focus on NLP, and I decided to take that on. So my advice is based on your level of technical interest. So whether you want to whether you want to research or you want to apply or you want to just learn how to use, applying code or learn how to use on a higher level. Based on that, pick 2 or 3 trends that you want to focus on. The way that I suggest picking those is really listening a lot to the different trends and information streams that come your way. The way that I chose NLP to focus on, and it was a very conscious decision, was it was around end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and I would keep track of different developments in the world of machine learning. And there, all I would hear is researchers and technical folks. So great. And then people are getting excited about NLP. At that point, Word2Vec was very popular. BERT didn't yet come out, but Word2Vec was popular. And I was like, okay, I don't know much about it, but sounds cool. But then all of a sudden, executives in the company started talking about, oh yes, NLP is going to help us better manage our data and give us more effective solutions. And I was like, wait, this is a change in trend. I never heard the word NLP comes from this was an executive VP coming from an executive VP. So I realized that there may be a shift, and it would be beneficial to us if we knew how to apply NLP and be able to serve that interest that's coming along. Keeping your eyes and ears open for these kind of things is going to be very useful for you to understand what can be beneficial to you, what can be beneficial to your company. I suggest picking 2 to 3 trends based on these understandings and keeping close following of things like blogs, news feeds that are tuned to what it is you're looking to learn about. I personally use LinkedIn as my source of information. I found that if I used LinkedIn for enough time, my feed became to be very much customized to what I'm looking to hear about. And now when I open it up, I see posts and articles and opinions by people who talk about how they're leveraging LLMs, what new LLM capabilities there are, and if Anthropic released a new version of Claude, then I know this, from LinkedIn first. And so I found that this is a good source for me to keep track of. If you have such good sources, different people use blogs and podcasts. There are other great stuff. If you keep these such good sources, then you know what you're going to want to focus on. Once you know what you want to focus on, get a book, get a course, get a series of lectures on YouTube, and start getting more familiar with the math, more familiar with the use cases, and more familiar with how to code them. But don't ignore the community buy-in. I think it's crucial. If you find an algorithm that you think is going to solve your problem, and you want to focus on that, try to see whether it's also as bought into by the rest of your community. If not, trying to understand why. Could there be a better one? Could it be that this one is too costly, too specific, too niche? You're going to want to have a joint conversation, a common language with your peers, not just in your company, but outside of it. And I think that is tremendous to building your career, being able to not just apply, but also speak in common terms.
That's a very good answer, Leo. Very comprehensive, and I think it has a lot for tech professional communities, tech pros, and business professionals as well. Uh, I think we can move to the next and the most exciting part, wherein it could be like a rapid fire question round. These are some very engaging questions which come to our viewers' mind quite often. So we can keep it crisp and short when we answer these questions like a rapid fire. So I'll begin with the first question to Lior and Meysam. So how do you see the evolution of large language models impacting human communications in the next decade?
I think I can start, and Lior can just complete that. So I believe that there will be lots of more efficient communications, that lots of the times right now when we want to have a problem with a company and we want to contact the customer service, we need to stay in line because we need to talk to a human, and the LLMs can just resolve that. Also, when we are trying to send an email or communicate with someone, we can just mention the key point, and based on our previous conversations, the LLM can just produce a nice report or text or email for us. And I believe that the communication will be much more easier and much more effective in the next few years.
I agree. In particular, translation, real-time translation, I think is that's something we've heard about since my school years. I remember my bachelor's. I focused on signal processing and, in particular, audio, automated audio processing, and then it was about classifying speech. And our lecturer told us that the holy grail, lighthouse that everybody's thinking towards is that you'll be able to talk to your phone in your language. The other person on the other end would hear it in their language. They'll respond in their language. You'll hear it back in your language, and there will be no language barrier. And the delay, the latency would be nearly zero. So I'm already seeing that. Only that the delay is not zero. I'm seeing that being reduced, but the delay, it's like it takes a few seconds. So one person sat next to another. It was in a conference. They were kind of demoing it. They spoke into this device, and they had an earpiece. And he spoke in, I think it was Japanese, and the other one was in Dutch. And they spoke to each other, but it took a few seconds to translate. So I think that is one of the most exciting deltas that we're going to see in capabilities.
I think really great answers. I think this is so exciting. The translation part where you mentioned there would be very less barriers, and that will make the world actually global. There would be no barriers, and people can communicate freely in their own languages, and the other person can understand them, which is a great use case. Now, another crazy question, if I were to ask you all have been in this industry for quite some time now. You'll have seen a lot of things, a lot of new trends, technologies developing. What is the most unexpected thing that you all have seen an AI model do?
Um, I guess I can give one that comes to mind from a positive aspect, the other one from a negative aspect. So from a negative aspect, we're seeing, from the aspect of hallucinations and mistakes, you can see great reasoning, supposedly, around something that's false. It's not true. It's completely hallucinating. And then you may not even always know this. Someone can flag that and say, look at this. It doesn't make any sense. And you're like, oh, right, it doesn't. I've seen it make up stuff. I've seen it make up stuff around math. I've seen it make up stuff around historical facts. We've seen great embarrassments that different companies endured when they released models, in particular image generating models, that they generated stuff that were completely beside reality and beside what the prompt required. And so all of that is to say, it is providing you whatever it does in the same level of confidence. It doesn't have a tone, and it doesn't have a metric that provides on how confident it is. And so you get it as is, and you're going to need to decide. So I think that's crazy, because the stuff that we saw there were crazy. On a positive side, its ability to reason on different levels is phenomenal. And in particular, I think that's very useful for younger folks. So in the Meysam touched on education, in the aspect of explaining things to kids, whether if it's concepts, how a credit card works, how, I don't know, a lock works, or in particular, people are getting very excited recently about how to explain complex math exercise, complex for elementary school kids, where you simply take a picture of the exercise and ask the model to walk a child through the solution I think that is phenomenal, and that is really a next level capability for kids that are going to be in the elementary school in the next few years. They're going to be able to take pictures of their exercises and understand how to solve it using its assistance.
That's good. Actually, regarding the hallucination, something crazy that I heard is that in the US, I believe that they use the LLMs in a judge in a court to just defending someone, and the LLM produced some reasoning that okay, this person is not guilty because of these points, and it also used the references for the points that mentioned, and the reference was fake. That it not just mentioned the not just produced the points, but also produced the fake reference, and it was kind of funny that I heard that. So this is something that we should always keep in mind when we are using LLMs, and that was funny when I heard that.
I think those are some really interesting answers. Viewers will really like listening to those. The next question in the rapid fire is so, can you all explain what is emergent behavior in LLMs and why is it so fascinating to researchers?
Can you
Anyone?
elaborate the question a little bit, please?
So,
Um,
there
so,
is a
yeah.
concept of emergent behavior here.
So do you mean that in how LLMs are showcasing new capabilities, new tendencies?
Right.
Um, I still find that it's mostly around how people are tunneling them to be used. And we spoke about the multi-agent aspect, and we spoke about the multimodal aspects. I think that what we're seeing is that as LLMs are becoming more and more common, they're being used in more mass usage of so it's by companies, we're seeing that being used to assist their clients, or in words, to assist their employees. We're also hearing about how these capabilities may be used by on larger scales, so governments and also criminals and cyber crimes in particular. So I think that these things are what we're going to be more exposed to, and one can wonder whether we're always aware when we are exposed to them. If it's cyber crimes or things of that sort, you may even not be aware, and so you're exposed to other risks or greater risks than you have been before. But I think these types of behaviors are what we're seeing coming out, or rather becoming more and more frequent. And so I think that the enforcement and regulations are what we could hope that would mitigate the risks. But the nature of things, and that's not just in tech, but in everything, is that these types of things usually grow and become more significant faster than legal and regulations are able to keep track of. And so we may see a lot of phenomena we haven't seen ever before around that, and it may take time for governments and all of that to keep track of. I think what may be holding it back at this point is perhaps the cost and complexity of computation. And so quantum computing may be the enabler of that, you know, flow to really explode.
And also, beside the quantum computing, as Lior mentioned, making them more accessible and cost efficient will be something that we will see a lot. So something like low rank adaptation, or how to more efficiently fine tune them for a specific task or use them, and trying to use simpler models for different tasks, and make the model small and yet efficient is something that lots of people are trying to focus right now. So this is something that we can think.
All right, I think that makes sense. Another question, which is quite popular right now, is AI is taking over all the jobs, and there will be no jobs for humans to do. What are your views on that? Is it media hype, or do you think it is a legitimate threat?
So
Um, so we all know that AI is able to assist and even automate away. So the question is how this would be chosen to be used by employers. It doesn't seem to me like employers are quick to eliminate roles. I think that we're starting to see um, optimization of the way that people work and upgrading the way that the people work and efficiency. I don't think people will be quick to get rid of their staffs. I think there are some low hanging fruit that definitely are now working better with AI and automated systems, and that makes sense. But it does make sense that over time, uh, there will be tasks and perhaps even complete roles that would be completely automated away. And I do believe that at the same time there will be other roles that would be coming in and becoming more relevant. I always assimilate the entrance of AI to the workspace. I assimilate that to the entrance of Excel. So before you had Excel, Microsoft Excel, you would need to have programmers run calculations for you, and so there was a need for a lot of programmers. And then when that came along, it became so seamless that you didn't have to be a technical person as much to be able to apply that, and it was super useful. You just dumped your data there, and you could sum, and you could do other manipulations. So did the need for programmers go away? No, we actually know that along with that, the need for programmers actually increased. And so when it comes to other professional capabilities in the legal space, in administrative space, and the curation space, that's true that some of them could see AI becoming more efficient. But I think there will be also other opportunities because we know that human oversight is necessary and relevant. That's something that we're not seeing being replaced yet.
yeah, I totally agree. We can talk about it like industrial revolution that happened, and uh, the type of the jobs will change and we will work more efficient. So let's say the doctors don't need to waste their time on reading or writing the reports, or a personal assistant can help us to be more efficient. So this is how it will change. But
I think
that,
great examples. I think Lior is right that with the advancements of Microsoft Excel, we did not lose a lot of jobs that we anticipated to. Same with calculators and mathematicians. People had apprehension that calculators would make people dumb in maths and they won't use their brain to make calculations, but that never happened. So yeah, we'll have to wait and watch. It could be a mix of both, a lot of media hype and some part of legitimate threat, but let's see how it goes. Moving on to the final question. So, do you think there is a risk of AI developing its own goals and becoming a threat, like you've seen in sci-fi movies like Skynet, or anything like you? Do you guys anticipate that ever happening?
Um, okay, so this is around something that is still called philosophical, but it may very well become completely practical. This is around whether AI can become autonomous to the extent that it will um, risk, there'll be a risk of it making decisions and it putting us, humanity, in a vulnerable place. Now, the counter arguments that most people have is, hey, we can always unplug right? We can always turn it off. But that's really short-sighted. Okay, so when we're talking about AI being able to take over, we're talking about AI forming dynamics in a sense that it would be dependent on those dynamics, and you would too be dependent on those dynamics. And so, pulling the plug will be as crazy as saying, if my apartment isn't serving me anymore, I'll demolish it. You won't be able to. You're kind of dependent on that, and you'll probably just need to get another apartment if you really have a problem with that, because you're completely dependent on it. Now, this is a very crazy far analogy, because an apartment doesn't have an ability to actively make decisions, but AI does. It can form dynamics in a way that would have a mutual interest with you as the user. And so you'll say, oh, yeah, form that dependency, connect to my bank account, connect to this data center, form a relationship with this other company and their AI for us to make this merge come together. And then the question is, can it do so in a way that doesn't give you, the user, all the power, but actually reserves some for itself, because it's going to have a sense of survivorship, that it's going to want to not let you, the user, have all the power. And so again, it starts to sound philosophical. And then you would ask, wait, why would it do that other than if it wants to control me? And the answer is, it's not just about it wanting to control you. It's also about it forming a mechanism that would prevent you from making a mistake, right? You have codependency. You don't want to, an AI can say, listen, let's not give you all the power. What if something happens to you? The entire company is going to be at risk. So let's have another set of security level. And so one can hypothesize how you get to a point where you have to give away some of the control to something that would be in the ether, basically this algorithm that can then perhaps backfire on you. And then you can say, well, aren't we already there? I mean, we put our faith into whatever, a healthcare system that you can say that at some point took a turn that is becoming very challenging. We now want to adjust it for the different, whatever, change in population, change in diseases, change in financial times. And then you find yourself dealing with something that is not so easy to adjust. That's the nature of things with large populations. Could that be the case again with the AI capabilities? It makes sense that it could. I think the question is not whether there's a risk of it becoming not completely controlled by us. Yes, other great things aren't completely controlled by any one individual. But the question is, would it do more good than bad? Every big system is hard to move and hard to shift. And so you can say that it has many ups and downs. Every justice system is looking to convict criminals, but you know that there is a risk that it will once in a while convict someone who is innocent. But that's a trade-off that every other country takes. It's not something that people think that you should ever cancel a justice system anywhere. And so that's the question to be asked. Is the risk something that you can monitor with AI? There's so many unknowns that's exactly what people can't answer. Is the risk something that's easy to trade off at this point, or can it grow exponentially to the extent that you not only you wouldn't want to take, but you wouldn't have the ability to stop because it will be too late by the time you found out? I'm asking more questions than providing answers, but it very well may be so that we won't know until we already make a decision. And yes, it's a risk.
That's true.
Anything you want to add to that, Meysam?
Yes, sure. So something that I would like to add is that something that we see in science fiction movies is that the robots are just everywhere and taking control. So we need to think something that human can reproduce and robots cannot by themselves. So, for example, we can have a very smart large language model that can be very powerful, give us very good outputs and other things, or very smart autonomous driver cars and other ones. But they work perfect. They can do lots of smart decisions. But Can they reproduce themselves to become more powerful or not? That's going to be a question. And also, as Lior mentioned, similar to any other technology, it has goods and bad. So, cell phone, it's good. We are using that for lots of good things, but lots of people are also addicted to their cell phones and social media, and it has bad effects as well. But at the end of the day, we should see how much useful it will be, and does it make our life better or not. So I think it's a valid question and concern, but we cannot say for sure that should we be concerned about that or not. But let's just wait and see. I think right now it's giving us lots of good things and it's making our life better and better.
All right. I think the right thing is to wait and watch and let's see how it goes. We have a lot of guardrails in place already, so we'll hope for the best. With this, Lior and Mason, we've reached the final part of our episode for today. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you all a lot for taking out time and joining the show today. This is our first episode, so a very special one. You are our first guest on All About AI with Ali Abdi, and you will go in the Hall of Fame for sure. To the viewers, this is an amazing book that Lior and Mason have written. I will link it down in the description for everybody to check out. Don't take my word for it. Take a look at the Amazon customer rating. You will understand how good this book is, helping a lot of community members to start off their careers from 0 to 1 and also with advanced application and useful interactions. Once again, thanks a lot, Lior and Mason. Looking forward to your ending notes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having us. I think it's a great opportunity to talk a bit about our thoughts and our and what we're observing in the market. Having the opportunity to put this book together with Pact was a great honor, and I think and what I'm hearing from people that are giving feedback, they find it valuable, they find it useful. I'm talking to programmers who haven't done ML or NLP before, and now with this new trend coming up, they want to pick up on that. Folks from social media companies, from folks from internet companies, they know they're going to be even more relevant and valuable by knowing these tools. And they take that, they take the code, they put it together, and they start playing with that, and they're seeing results right away. I'm talking to product folks and business folks and even leadership, and they find interest in the last chapters, and in particular the chapters around business trends and where how leaders are thinking about AI. And so we have good confidence that we put together something that helps people move forward with understanding something that is not so obvious, and not so easy to manage. And it gives me faith that we're going to be seeing more people coming into the field, more books coming out, and have more confidence, and know how to utilize this new capability. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ali, for having us. It was a pleasure being here. And as Leo mentioned, we are so glad that we were able to prepare this book and put all of the materials that we believe that can be useful for different type of audience. And we are very excited to hear the feedbacks from different type of people. And yeah, the NLP and generative AI is progressing so fast, and we should try do our best to just move with the speed of the field. So let's see how it goes, and we are glad about that.
Thank you for your time, guys, and I hope you'll have a great day ahead. Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
So that's all for today's episode in All About AI for Ali Abdi. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I promise you all that we'll be back with more exciting guests, some insights in the world of AI. Until then, never stop learning and stay curious. Bye bye.